what milestones do you see as being the most impactful when we talk about the acceleration of hyper Bitcoinization?
I mean, El Salvador is the first sovereign state to recognize it and even hold it in their treasury. And I think the next milestone is really to look at a wealthy, industrialized nation that holds it in their sovereign wealth. That's interesting, because then you got to sit at the table at the sovereign level who are going to bat for Bitcoin against like banning it or regulating it out. I think that's important. It'll add comfort to a lot of people coming in. I think in terms of a metric, the next milestone really is the distribution. To have that distribution be less concentrated and start to reflect something akin to what we see within the fiat world, and then further distribute. I think that's one of the most important things. Everything within Bitcoin is very reliant on decentralization, and decentralization of the wealth base is just as important. That would be a kind of non-visible political milestone. It's non-political milestone. It's just a metric where we just cross, and like now it's more spread than fiat. And then, hopefully it continues to spread and we have a better distribution of wealth in the world. I mean, that's my hope. Let's see how it works. Currently it's more just concentrated, but I'm seeing every year that the whales sail down, and eventually we'll have succession. The original rich whales will eventually pass on their inheritance to the next generation. And so, I think we'll get there. Plan B.
Predicting is difficult, but predicting far in the future is even more difficult. One thing I learned is that even 2 years into the future is so difficult. If you look back 2 years, right? If you look back at the end of 2019, I would have never predicted COVID or the whole thing around that. That's not even 2 years ago. What will happen and what will be the big accelerator for Bitcoin and a lot more things with it is something we don't know yet. Something that will pop up next month, tomorrow, 6 months from now, that will alter the entire scene. It could be climate change. It could be a cyber security leak scenario with attacks, and then all the banks, all the money is gone. And of course, Bitcoin is the only network that cannot be hacked and attacked. It's something we cannot even think of right now that will trigger that hyper Bitcoinization.
Do you think about tail risks?
Yeah, tail risk.
Like I think it's a tail risk that Bitcoin doesn't succeed. I think it's more like it's already at a level of success where it's going to get to the next level. But the tail risk is if something breaks and then the next day it's gone.
Yeah. The tail risk. Yeah, there is tail risk. But I agree with you. How I see it is Bitcoin is the better money. It's the better store of value. It's mathematically, thermodynamically, it's the best there is. So it must succeed. It has to succeed. It can be stalled. It can be sabotaged by political things, by military things. But it is physically or thermodynamically, it's mathematically, it's the best thing there is. So it would be like saying keep saying that the Earth is flat while it is round. You cannot hold that ball under the water. It has to pop up. So I fully agree. Bitcoin will go higher and higher, and there is still risk.
We can't see it by definition, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the saying that the biggest risks are the ones you don't know, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And that's the same is true for the biggest opportunities. So I think the next trigger, it will pop up. One day we'll wake up and then there it is. Changes the whole world.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, like, I think that we're looking at pretty much a 4-year from now to really, have Bitcoin as a main contender on the world scene as a new money, or definitely a large macro store of value. It's interesting because the next halving brings Bitcoin to the inflation rate below gold. It gets pretty scarce. Yeah, one more. Like, I think the when I talk about the cycles, I think we agree on the destination, where it's going. I think there's just different views on the shape of the chart. Whether or not we have the painful 1 year drawdown of 80%. And I think that's the difference of it is how, and a lot of people have said, does it invalidate stock to flow? Well, of course it doesn't, because that's just based on the scarcity valuation, which doesn't change. It's just how does the price sort of meander in its shape, which is, it's a very, important point for people who want to time the market and want to sell the top, like, I did, Plan B did for 50%. And
it's interesting, Willie. It means we're back at the risk measure point, right? It's how do we and the options in there. So will there be a minus 50 or minus 80% drop again? It's a risk thing, basically. So that the endpoint is, I think, clear. The trend is clear. It will go up, but how will we get there? And will there be minus 80% drawdowns? That's the
exactly.
big question.
It's all about the risk. It's all the downside and how much you're willing to withstand. And I think there's more than that. It's like, there's times when I'm trading and the trade is going against me. And I know it's going to swing back because I've got the fundamental data that's like very, very strong. And I'm like, well, it's going to swing back, but I will sell down my position to mitigate the downside risk. And the reason I do that is not because I don't believe I'm going to win this trade. The reason I do that is because I know ahead of time, if it goes below a certain level, I won't be able to stomach that level of downside whilst keeping a clear head. So I'm actually proactively, I know my risk tolerance pretty well, having traded for so long, and I'm going to take some money off the table, downsize the risk so that if it hits lower, I'm really going to make a less emotional, I'm going to make a decision more rationally rather than out of fear. So like, it's like that, I think it's not only understanding risk, but it is really much understanding how your behavior is going to happen. Like how is it going to play out with the road ahead, which is really important.
And one thing I'll be looking at like a hawk is the option markets that we talked about before, because the option markets is a risk market, is a volatility market. That's basically trading volatility as an asset. And I pulled up the numbers right now for September options, September next year. So a year from now, almost, the implied volatility is still above a 90%, between 90 and 100% implied volatility. And I guess if or when the markets, because both of us can be right? If the super cycle, the hyper Bitcoinization sets in, and the market is convinced it will go without those minus 50% or 80% drops, then that implied volatility in the option markets will be the first signal, the very first signal, because they are directly trading that as an asset, where the implied volatilities will drop. That's what I think. And right now they're at 90, 100. So that's really high.